Welcome to Fridays with a Forester. Today is April 17th, 2026. Get ready for tree seed collection in spring. Scouting and participatory science is the topic today. Your host today is myself, Gary Wyatt, Extension Educator in the Forestry team based at our Mankato Regional Office. Also, Lauren Backus, Regional Support Staff at Andover, and she's also helping us with our Zoom today, as well as some of our other staff in Forestry and Extension. Today's topic and speaker, getting ready for tree seed collection in the spring. Kira Pollock is our extension educator in forestry, and she's on St. Paul campus and I think Andover too. There's her email. So she's going to be our speaker today. We ask that you put your questions in the Q&A in the Zoom here. All of our recordings are recorded on a Z-Link, z.umn.edu/Fridays, and we'll try and end at 10 o'clock. Kira, I'm going to stop sharing and you can start.
All righty. Can you see my screen?
Yes, looks very good. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, good morning. As Gary mentioned, my name is Kira Pollock. I'm an extension educator based out of the North Metro area, so the Andover Regional Office. And I spend a lot of time in St. Paul. So we are going to talk today about getting ready for tree seed collection now. So if you were to close your eyes, which you can do, but you're not required to, and you were imagining tree seed season, what are the things you're seeing? What are you smelling? What textures are around you? What calendar season are you thinking about? Now, I'm assuming that most people are thinking about fall. Which makes sense if you go into any sort of craft store starting in September, though it starts earlier every year, you'll see pine cones and acorns and squirrels and all of the things that make you think, oh, it is time for seed. And you're not wrong. But as a transplant from the Southeast United States, I gotta say, don't wish spring away. This is our reward for surviving winter, and there's still work to be done now for all species. And you might say, Kira, I think spring is only good for allergies. And I would say, I'm so sorry. Take your antihistamine. But we got two things going on for us in spring. We have the trees that do seed out in spring, and we've got preparation for the trees that seed out in fall and winter. So first we are going to go through as if we are collecting silver maple, which is a spring cedar. If you are going to collect samaras, you need to know a couple of things. Where can we go collect? What does silver maple even look like? How do I know I'm collecting from the correct tree? When is seed ready? How do we go collect good seed, and what does that even mean? And then what do we do with the seed once we have it? So starting out, and I have to tell you that I love an acronym, so we're going to start with PAW. We should collect where it is P for present. So where in the state is it? Which if you look at this map over here, we see that it is present in most of the state of Minnesota, except for that far west portion. So great. A lot of us could go out and collect silver maple if we wanted to. But we also need to think about where exactly in those spots is it? And so silver maple is a wet-loving species. You can find it in floodplain areas, but you're probably not going to find it in a super dry hilltop. The A is for abundant. This is important for a couple of reasons. One, the more trees you have in an area, the more genetic diversity you're likely to have. It's not just interbreeding over and over again. Again, I'm from Georgia. We might think of this as being the Alabama effect. We want to make sure that we have as much diversity as possible. And the more individuals you have in an area, the more seed you can get in one spot. So work smarter, not harder. The picture on this screen shows 3 silver maples, and while they are lovely and they might be producing a lot of seed, it's only 3 trees. This site probably wouldn't be worth it. The W is for wild or well adapted. So part of that genetic diversity is wanting to make sure that the seedlings that are grown from those seeds have the best shot at surviving and doing well where they're planted. So if we want to plant in Minnesota, and we do, then we want trees that are adapted to the climate of various spots in Minnesota. That means that old wild trees, which their genes are selected for where they are, we know that they're going to do well and their offspring should also do well. When they're planted, especially recently, they can come from anywhere in the United States. I was on a planting project a couple of years ago, and we were trying to source all of our trees from Iowa. We were moving species and populations a little bit further north as part of a research project, but we couldn't find enough of northern pecan trees, so we had to source them from Georgia. That's really far. So if we don't know where the genetics are coming from, we can't guarantee that we are going to have healthy, well-adapted trees. So thinking about so wild as in was it planted in a park? Is it equally spaced? Probably planted. Um, is it planted poorly? Can you see the root flare, or is it a lollipop that's just straight in the ground? Probably planted. So all of these things to keep in mind so that we can get the best seed possible. Now, there are two big rules in seed collection. The first is don't die, and the second is don't get in trouble. These are adapted from a former supervisor of mine at Great River Greening. Thank you, Becca. So the first one is all about safety. Not only should you think about um, your personal safety, what are your limits? What are you comfortable doing? And knowing what you're not comfortable doing, it's okay. You don't have to save the world all by yourself. Um, but where are you going and what do you need? Is there poison ivy at that site? Is the trail easy to navigate or is it kind of rough? Can you park nearby? Do you have enough water? Do you have a buddy? There are lots of things to consider to make sure that you're safe. And on the flip side of that, making sure that the site is safe from you. So, thinking about the leave no trace principles, can you make sure that you are not inhibiting understory growth by trampling on it? So, all of those things. And the don't get in trouble part refers to making sure that you have permission to be at that site. Private land is going to be easiest, especially if it's yours. But if it is a friend or family member's and you have explicit permission to be there, excellent, all done. Wash your hands of that. You're good. On the other hand, we have a lot of public land in the state, and all of those lands have different permission structures depending on who manages them and for what purpose. So, for example, state land is managed for a wide range of goals. State forests are managed for forests. Generally speaking, you can get permission for the area forester and you can collect there. State parks, on the other hand, as of right now, you cannot collect there. So always good to figure out where you are and who manages it and ask for permission. Always ask for permission, not forgiveness. We're too new to ruin relationships now. Okay, we found now a reliable site and we're allowed to be there. We feel comfortable collecting and maybe we have a buddy. Now what? Well, now we have to make sure that we're collecting from the correct tree. Now, this one might be a little easier for maples than it would be for oaks, just depending on your comfort level and where you are. But let's go over how to identify silver maple throughout the year. So we'll start with bark because this is the easiest in terms of year-round identification. So it has this gray silvery bark. It's flaky and really thick strips. As it gets older, it twists up the trunk. I think it looks a lot like a tornado in that kind of twisty whirlwind. And our one-eyed friend over here, Addie, says, make sure you're not barking up the wrong tree. Bud and twigs is a little bit further away, but I think it's just good to know. So twigs are glabrous, meaning that they are smooth and not hairy, glossy, and a red-brown shade. You will notice that as they age, they go from this red, they get browner, and then they go to that gray shade. The buds and twigs are oppositely arranged, and they are red-brown and rounded. The leaves are gorgeous. They are palmately formed, which means like a hand. They have a center and then they radiate outward. They have five lobes, which are the outies, and deep sinuses, which are the innies. They get their name because the underside of the leaf is a beautiful silver color. And in the fall, they turn yellow. I think the flowers are fascinating, but you probably aren't going to look at them with a, oh, what is the word? Magnifying glass. But it's important to know. So maples as a genus are polygamodioecious, meaning that they have both male and female flowers on the same tree, sometimes on different branches, sometimes on same branches. It's super fascinating. They do their own thing, which is what we want to see. They're doing great. Um, and so the staminate flowers are the ones producing the pollen, and the pistillate flowers are the one that will form the seed, which as they mature, they turn into what we call samaras. You might call them helicopters. I don't care what you call them as long as you know what they are and you feel confident collecting them if that's your goal. These are our largest native samaras here. They're about 1.5 to 2.5 inches. They form in pairs and they connect in about a 90-degree angle, but they don't always both mature. Often, as you can see in the right picture here, we've got, one fully formed and then one that's been aborted. And that's pretty typical for all maples. There are some lookalikes, and I want to point those out because depending on maybe how you learn to identify a tree, you might only be looking at leaves or you might only be looking at bark, and that's fine, but let's get into it. So, as I mentioned, silver maple has these really gorgeous deep sinuses. They look a little more skeletal if we're going with that hand analogy, a little bonier. And again, that silver underside. Sugar maple also tends to have five lobes, but they're blockier. Think the Canadian flag. Red maple might have five, though it often has three lobes, and the edges are serrated all the way around, meaning they've got teeth all over. Our Norway maple is a non-native species, and it doesn't look super like silver maple, but I wanted to include it because its seeds do look a little similar. So our silver maple, again, these 90-degree, large. Norway is also large, so they can be 2-ish inches or so, but they are connected, how I think of it, a lot like the mustache we were all obsessed with in the early 2000s. The like, I'm so cute, um, which is different than all the other ones. So they kind of go out where everything else goes in. Um, but Norway maple and sugar maple, and just for funsies, sugar maple is U-shaped, like the U in sugar. These two species are going to be seeding out in the fall. So if you see a Norway maple, you're like, maybe it's silver. Wrong season. Red maple, on the other hand, does seed out in the spring also, and they can hybridize in urban spaces, but in wilder park type spaces, they aren't going to because they just don't grow in the same spaces. So red maple is more upland, silver maple, lowland. And red maple seeds are pretty tiny, so they're 1/2 inch or so, and they are connected in a more narrow V. Okay, that was a really, really quick dendrology lesson. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. But I'm going to now assume that you can comfortably recognize a silver maple in the wild throughout the years, which is important because you might want to pay attention to them throughout the year. And you can confirm that it's at the site that you want to collect at. Hooray! We're not done yet. Now we have to figure out what the timeline is. Now, you found your site and you know that you're going to collect at some point, but you probably aren't going to be looking every second of every day, which I wouldn't expect you to. You've got a life outside of seed collecting, probably. But we can use seasonal patterns that, phenology is the term for that, to predict when seeds will be ready. So I know this picture isn't of maples, it's of northern red oak, but how do we go how long does it take to go from this early growth, they probably just flowered out, to mature seed? Well, if we look at the Seeds of Ontario Trees and Shrub Guide, which I have right next to me here, we see that there's a timeline that they give us, and I have it on the center of the screen here. We see that according to this guide, the flowering happens sometime throughout April. We forecast especially mid-May, and we're collecting the end of May, early June. And that is fantastic. But climate change, and also remember that guide is from Ontario. So we are not in Ontario, and we certainly aren't in Ontario in 2014. So we know that patterns are shifting and the timeline's a little less predictable. I planted daffodils this year, and I was not sure when they were going to come up because my family is showing me pictures in January, and the was going last month, and mine started coming up this week. It's really confusing. When is spring, and what does that mean for us? So going with the guide for last year's trainings, I was super excited to have the online portion of my training in May and to set up collection events that very first week of June. And it should have been perfect collecting time, but we had a week of 90-degree weather in May. So all of the Samaras dropped right before our collection events, which was a real kicker. And this is where scouting and data collection can help us figure out when we should be looking at our site and our target species in particular. So some quick definitions. Scouting is going out and visiting your sites around pivotal moments of seed production to inform decision making. Meaning, do we want to invest our time and effort at this site? Maybe it was a great site last year, but it's not great this year, depending on the timing of when trees produce seed. Are they annual like maples? Is it every 3-ish years like an oak? These are things to consider. And if there is seed, is it ready now? Are we almost there? Did we miss it and we should come back later? That's what scouting is for. Data collection is the process of writing that all down. So I have been using Nature's Notebook, which is a participatory science tool, which tracks the phenophases of specimens, meaning you're one tree individual. You're not saying this is general for everything yourself. That's what lots and lots of people adding their data about one specific tree here and one specific tree there help us do. So this helps us determine trends and get to those seeds on time. So here's an example of some tracking that I was doing of phenophases here in St. Paul on the campus. So this tree is right outside of my window, and these dates are from last year. So we see that in mid-April of last year, we are just starting to see bud break, and it takes us another 9 days to get to this phase of seeing the male flowers, the catkins, starting to emerge. They're still pretty tightly packed, so they're not letting out pollen yet. And then another 2 weeks or so, so early May, when we see the itty bitty leaves finally coming out. I have a coworker, they call them leaf puppies, and they're precious, and we can see the male catkins are a little looser here. So this is what it looks like to put that data into the Nature's Notebook web page. They have an app and an online web page. I've been doing it online. And so just paying attention to all of the phenophases, and they tell you what that means. So before that first picture, no, there were no leaf buds breaking, but then they were. And then they were already broken, so it's back to no, but we're seeing leaves. So I think it's really fun. It helps time slow down, which as someone who sucks at time, has been really good for me to realize that the month of May is actually crazy long and not quite so brief as it always feels like it is. And it's great for at least my mental health because I'm going outside and I'm slowing down, I'm paying attention. And then again, on the scientific side, when we tune, excuse me, into the seasonal rhythms of trees, we're more prepared to collect and everything feels a little less hectic. So now we get to the part of what is good seed. Good seed is ripe seed. It's viable. It means if we were to plant it, something would grow. And we can figure out what's happening internally based on how it presents externally. And we can also go and see what's going on inside. So the picture on the left shows somebody holding some, frankly, it looks like Amur maple seeds. They could be red maple, but probably not, that have been cut through the middle. And we can see the cotyledons, so the what will become the first leaves when the tree, when it sprouts. Excuse me, it is Friday. Good morning. They are all tightly wound in here. They've grown, they're filling the space within the seed head. That is a well-developed seed. On the other hand, as I mentioned, sometimes even though it looks like both seeds have developed in their pair, probably only one of them has. That's okay, but notice that it's empty. The other thing we can look at when we're just looking externally is what color. You can see here that we've got ripe silver maple seeds and they're this gorgeous tan color as opposed to green or pink. So we know that they are ready. Another sign that seed is ready is for silver maple samaras in particular, all maple samaras, is that they are ready when they are no longer attached to the tree. This is not true for every species, but for maple it is. You collect it on the ground, which makes it easier for you. That's a win. But it does mean you are now starting to compete with other critters. You want to make sure that you have the tools you need for collection, and that will depend on the site. What are the conditions? Is the understory clear or is it super brambly? Do you have long-term access to that site? Maybe you put down a tarp. Or are you only there for a little bit? So you're just grabbing a rake and you, of course, need something to hold your seed. So buckets or bags. And if you're going to be on the ground, I do highly recommend knee pads. Then you have to figure out storage. Now, this is a species for sure that you want to only hold on for a little length of time. This is honestly true for all seed, but especially silver maple samaras, which are recalcitrant, see right here, which means that they need to maintain some of their moisture, that humidity, because they are ready to go immediately. They drop in spring. They want to start sprouting in spring also. If you let them dry out, they won't be viable anymore. The seed is dead. So in this case, we want to put them in plastic Ziploc style baggies for, again, just a little bit because they are alive and so they do need some oxygen eventually. There are orthodox seeds which can dry out. So that's also true, interestingly, of red maple samaras. They can dry and store for longer periods of time. The seeds within cones dry and can be stored for a long period of time. So it's important to know your species in particular and what its needs are. So we have a picture of lovely seed collector Sid, and they are holding a ton of bags of samaras. So behold the beautiful container of samaras. We could scatter them into the wind and start our maple kingdom, but probably most of you are not collecting for personal use. If you are, go for it. Maple Kingdom for the win. I'm thrilled for you. But for the rest of us, we are probably going to donate or sell that seed to someone else who is doing either research on assisted migration or reforestation plantings. So we need to know what they need, what species, where, and how we're getting seed to those organizations. So it's important to know if they will pick up your seed or if you need to go drop them off. And if you're dropping them off, where? What are the hours? calling ahead is always really good because they can tell you what they need and you're not putting in a whole lot of work. You show up, you're like, look at my beautiful seed, and they say, that is beautiful seed, and we've already met our quota. That'd be a bummer. And if there are any processing requirements. So if you are collecting acorns, do you need to float them? It's also important to make sure that you are collecting any data that that organization needs. Um, so again, calling ahead to make sure that you have what they need and what data they need from you. So we can see on this bag that we have the species name, the date it was collected, the specific coordinates for where they were collected, the number of parent trees, and in this case, it has the person's name. Not all organizations are going to need that. For example, the DNR, I mean, they would probably really happily take all of that information, but what they need is the county and probably the town because they want to know what seed zone you collected from, and they don't need quite as much information. That being said, it's always better to collect more data that you don't need than it would be to collect less data than you do need. As a reminder, we can only boost Minnesota's tree planting capacity of high quality viable seed, or if high quality viable seed gets where it needs to go. So we just ran through this entire process as if we were collecting silver maple, but we know that this entire process, the basic steps are true for any target species with any type of seed. You just have to take the time to learn about what your target species phenology is, how to identify it. Tracking it on Nature's Notebook would be a huge help for everyone because the Ontario Guide is a fantastic resource, and I think we can get a little more personalized. And then periodically checking on seeds' developmental progress throughout the spring and summer to get good seed to where it needs to go. So that checklist is determining your target species. So what do you want to collect? What is present, abundant, and wild near you? Go find it. Or what location are you able to get to that you have permission to collect from? What is the phenology? What should you be looking for? What are those indicators? And then scouting periodically. How long will it take for this itty bitty eastern white pine cone to get big? And how long will it take for this itty bitty tiny baby acorn to get to a viable size? And on this bottom right corner, we also have black walnut because they're just so cute. And all of this, fingers crossed, will help you be less stressed at the time of collection because you will have done all of your homework beforehand. All right. So I mentioned earlier that I love an acronym. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about the courses that I've had and that are coming up. So last year, I started a course called ACORNS, which was Access, Collection, Organization, and Redistribution of Nuts and Seeds. And that was a hybrid course with an online component, and then we met for an in-person workshop. And it was focused primarily on 6 species of hardwood trees. I'm expanding that training this year, working with the DNR to make sure that they're getting the species that they need to do more reforestation work. And so we're going to focus a little bit more on our conifers, though we'll keep hardwood species in there, no worries. I'm calling that one Cacones, Certified Collector of Nuts, ampersand Seeds. And the first courses modules should be available by June. I will be keeping you posted on my website, which I'll have in the next slide, and through My Minnesota Woods. So we'll let you know, and then things will kind of be trickling in from there, and that will be a totally free online course. And then there'll be some buying information sessions by the DNR. The Farm and Forest Growers Cooperative will probably also host an in-person workshop, hopefully. So keep your eyes out for that. All right. Thank you all so much. I would love to answer any questions you have about seed collection, and everything else. Thanks.
Here, why don't you keep your slide set up for sharing in case you have to go back? And yeah, we'll look at some questions in the Q&A. Is Acorn training still available online? That's your first question.
So if you were previously signed up for Acorns, access to that Canvas site is still available. New registrations are not available at this time. It will be really similar. This new training will be really similar, but it'll be on a different platform and it will be available year round. So it'll have a different structure. It won't be as location based as Acorns was, but I still hope you get a lot out of it.
Here, can you mention the 6 species that you have tracked? Yes, last year.
Sure. So I was working with Farm and Forest Growers Cooperative and researchers at University of Minnesota Duluth on their assisted migration research. And we were looking at species that are projected to do well in northern Minnesota. Those were silver maple, yellow birch, black walnut, swamp white oak, bur oak, and northern red oak. A very
Thank you.
colorful palette.
Yes, very cool. Another question, will the cones course be online only?
The content is being developed for online. I'm hoping to also work with folks who have sites for collection. So maybe I'm working with a county land department or a park board or whatever to then offer an online or an in-person version of the online course. So something a little bit like this, but in person, talking about what species are at that location, and then going out together to go collect there, and then hopefully having a really place-based model. But otherwise, yes, the plan is that it's online so that as many people can access it as possible.
Great. Another question and comment from Chris. Thank you so much, Kira. This was great info. FYI, I plan on sharing this info with my scout troop to see if I
Nice.
can get them interested in some collecting on regular monthly outings. Pretty cool.
That would be cool. And I know no one's going to get super rich by collecting seeds, but there are absolutely opportunities for some fundraising. I know that the DNR is hoping to work with more groups like Scouts in order to collect cones. Depending on what species you're looking at, you can get, I think black spruce is up to $170 a bushel. And they can make it really easy. They can bring spruce tops to you, or you can coordinate if you know of any timber sales happening near-ish you. You can go and collect tops. So there are definitely easy ways to do it and easy ways to involve youth. And the goal is really to equip as many people as possible with the skills to go out and collect seed so that we're not like reliant on this it feels like a secret knowledge that only a couple people possess.
Another question, can anyone sign up yet or not until June?
Not till June. It doesn't exist yet. It's all in my brain, which is a problem.
That's hard to crack sometimes. Anyway.
Yeah, like a black walnut shell. It's
Are there any trees in Minnesota whose seeds can completely dry out, or are all Minnesota's tree seeds what's the term?
recalcitrant.
Yes,
No,
thank you.
not every Minnesota seed is recalcitrant. There are only a couple. So acorns can't dry all the way out. Silver maple samaras, as I mentioned. I believe that our fruit seeds are also, you don't want them to get super dry, like cherry, the pits. But there are a lot of species that can dry out, and then that's its own challenge. So we know that the seeds within cones can dry out, but often what happens is that cones mold in storage, and so you're fighting different battles depending on what your seed needs.
Another question maybe regarding the DNR request on conifers, but what tree seeds are needed in 2026? Where do we locate buyers or organizations to donate to?
Yeah, as far as I know, the DNR 2026 list has not been published, but that is, um, they do a really good job of updating their website, especially recently. And so if you Google uh, DNR seed cone, it should be the first thing that pops up. They have really good search optimization. Um, they will tell you prices and about when they're looking for it. You can find all the information for um, the buying offices. Farm and forest growers, they typically um, post, and that's climatesmarttrees.com, I believe. And you can always email Stefan at farmforestgrowers@gmail.com, and they can tell you what species they're looking for. I know they're expanding the species they're interested in. Um, PRT is a private nursery, and they are sometimes looking for seed. Everyone's looking for red pine, so I'd say probably prioritize DNR there instead of PRT. But PRT is great too.
Okay,
I
thank you,
have
Garrett.
I am not uh I'm a representative for all and not for one. So dancing a fine line there. But
Great. Thanks, Kira. Are there any species that might produce seeds in the fall, but is better to harvest in the spring? Question. And then along with that, I had luck with germinating catalpa from beans uh, hanging during the winter. Really neat seeds, though. That's from Shane.
I don't know a lot about catalpa. Their seeds are funky. They're achenes. They look like they're in a bean pod. They're fascinating. I grew up with them in Georgia, but they are pretty new here in Minnesota. Um, There are some species that can wait, so they stay on the tree and their cones can stay closed. So I'm specifically thinking about jack pine, especially the serotinous versions. We have kind of two um, physiological presentations here in the state. So jack pine cones and black spruce can also be collected throughout the winter and into spring. We had a collection event a couple weeks ago, and there were still really good cones. And that is often because we're waiting for um, timber sales to go through, and they're waiting until the ground is frozen to do the least amount of damage to the soil. So, again, those can be collected into, I'd say, like late winter, early spring, spring everywhere else, but still winter here. And uh, birch catkins, if they are still intact, will still be good and they might still be on the tree. It's just that they shatter and then they're wind dispersed. So they're extra tiny and they skate across the surface of the snow. So you could potentially still collect them in spring, but it might be too late depending on the weather.
Here, you mentioned black spruce and jack pine and red pine. Any other conifers that the DNR might be interested in?
Yeah, so eastern white pine,
Oh, white pine.
tamarack. mm,
That's fine.
yeah, I mean sometimes they're looking for balsam. It really depends.
Great. And how many classes did you have last year in the field? You remember?
I had, I think, four groups in the spring and mm, three concurrent, like local cohorts
Sure.
in Rochester, the Twin Cities, and Carlton, and those had two workshops each.
Thank you.
So,
Some more questions coming in. Kira, are you seeing a shift in jack pine cones going from less release, let's see, and fire released cones because of decrease in fire disturbance?
that's a fantastic question. I don't know if that's the reason. And I think it depends a little bit on what seed was collected from where. And so one of the ways that we get tree seed is by planting seed orchards. And so we're kind of bringing all the diversity into one spot. And so it may just have been that we had more non-resinous, or maybe it's I I am not a geneticist. I want to know more. So I don't think that it is a um like a one-to-one, but I'm sure the lack of fire has influenced which seeds are able to propagate
Very good.
there.
Uh, Another question, when is the best time to harvest tamarack cones?
What a fantastic question. I know that that is on the DNR website, and let's see what our fancy Dancy Bar book says. Um, this one only has European larch. That's a shame. But I believe that's around September, October.
We can get back to you, Dawn, on that.
July, August, according to the Minnesota DNR. So that's why it's important to check a couple different sources.
Okay, very good. If you have any more questions, please enter them in the Q&A, please. So June, there's your website there, the Z-Link Tree Seed is your website for all these classes, right, Kira?
Mhm.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that'll have all the basics that I kind of went over with silver maple, but species unspecific in this case. And then it will be updated when it is time to register for the course.
And there's been some links that our teammates have been putting in the chat, so notice that certainly. I think if you want to stop sharing, I'll close with a few slides. Let's see, here we go. Is that full screen?
Yep, looks good.
Yeah, Lauren, thank you. Kira, excellent job today. And Kira's done a great job in training people last year and maybe the year before even when she first started getting ready for tree seed collection in the spring. So if you're really interested in doing this, to contact her. There's her email there, and her website was on a previous slide. We are having one last April 24th webinar with Peter Geiser, and he's going to be talking about wildlife next week. As you leave today's Zoom, you'll be asked some evaluation questions. Please put in your comments about today's Zoom, and then also about maybe topics and speakers that you want to hear from next year. And here's some important types of Z-links. If you're not receiving our My Minnesota Woods, the monthly newsletter of our forestry team and extension, certainly there's a Z-link there, and the Z-link of all the recordings of Fridays with a Forester, c.umn.edu/Fridays. And we thank you for joining us today.